Just picked up this book that's super popular on TikTok. It's the worst piece of English literature I have ever read in my entire life. Bookish content on TikTok, also known as book talk, has caused tons of young people to rekindle their love for reading. Videos that recommend books get millions of views. Teens are creating content around showing off their beautiful new bookshelves, what it's like being a reader, and authors are seeing sales they could never dream of. So, that's good, right? People are happy that young people are reading again? Well, the general opinion on book talk among people that aren't Gen Z is more something along the lines of book talk bad. In my time of being a book talk consumer, I've also had the misfortune of reading a lot of articles, not just from the US, like even in my home country, the Netherlands, of kind of mainstream journalism complaining about book talk. There's another one of these articles that came out recently that ruffled some feathers, crumpled some pages, if you will. The title of this article is "In the Shallow World of Book Talk, Being a Reader is More Important Than Actually Reading. The TikTok books community is more about a lifestyle aesthetic than actually reading." Now, the point of this video is not to specifically hate on that article, but we are going to be using it as kind of a case study of book talk hatreds. And that is because this article kind of neatly includes every single common criticism of book talk that we will be discussing today. Let me read to you the first paragraph. "There was just something about watching the same 20 books being flaunted again and again. People openly confessing to owning hundreds of unread books. The flagrant abuse of sticky tabs in novels that absolutely do not require that much citation. Bookshelves that are so perfect that they arouse suspicion. It was like entering a parallel universe where reading wasn't just something that someone did for fun. It was a lifestyle, an aesthetic. People were readers." I've read a lot of articles like this over the years, and they always have one thing in common, and that is that they ignore the valid criticisms that you could have of book talk, and instead choose to just be incorrect about book talk. I'm not entirely sure who I intend to make happy with this video, because I am going to be defending book talk from the criticisms in these kind of negative articles, but then we're also going to be criticizing book talk. So anyway, I guess you could say I'm kind of a reader. I used a stack of books to prop up my microphone. Look, see? I'm a real reader. I've made plenty of videos about TikTok books already, so I really wanted to make a video exploring what the influence of TikTok is on reading as a hobby. You know, is TikTok ruining books? And these are the things that we'll be discussing in this video. First, I want to dispute the common argument that TikTok only talks about the same 20 books. Then I want to go into what it means to make reading as a hobby part of your online identity, and also the potential pitfalls of this. Then I want to explore why reading has become an aesthetic and why that's not actually a problem. And lastly, I do really want to touch on the broader internet phenomenon of curating a personal online brand and how books can play a role in this. I cannot make this video without beginning with by far the most common criticism of book talk, and that is TikTok only recommends the same 20 books. And let's be real, to a certain extent, this is true. If you scroll on TikTok as a new user, you are going to be fed mostly content about Sarah J. Maas, Colleen Hoover, The Song of Achilles, a lot of fairy smut. And you're just not gonna see Kafka or like Russian literature when you just enter the book talk space. And people tend to point their fingers at book talkers for this. Look at these stupid girls. They're all reading the same books. There was just something about watching the same 20 books being flaunted again and again. And this is the main criticism that I've seen being made almost everywhere. And I think there's something sad, but like weirdly funny about seeing so many journalists make the exact same mistake. And that is basing their opinion of book talk on what seems to be only scrolling on TikTok for maybe an hour, and then maybe the shelves in bookstores that say Book Talk recommends these books. Because if you spend even a little bit more time on Book Talk, you will very quickly find out that this lack of variety is because of the algorithm and not because of Book Talk lacking any kind of variety. Now, I don't claim to know exactly how the TikTok algorithm works. I don't think anyone does. But generally speaking, social media algorithms work like this. The only thing the algorithm cares about is making sure that new viewers stay on the platform, and therefore they want to show you whatever keeps you engaged. So if a new user enters the platform of TikTok or the niche of Book Talk, what are they gonna do? They're just gonna show you the videos that statistically keep most people engage, and they're gonna show that to everyone. And here is actually where I think there could be very valid criticism of Book Talk and just TikTok as a whole, and that is because it's so algorithm based and the recommendations are also algorithm based, it causes the mainstream taste to be accentuated and pushed forward, and little less mainstream books are going to be buried in the algorithm, creating an even bigger rift between them. The most popular mainstream novels are going to be whatever is most in line with the status quo. So these are probably going to be stories about like white straight women. This is things like Sarah J. Maas or Colleen Hoover. Side note, whether these books are good or bad is not what I'm going to be going into in this video. I know there's a lot to be said about Sarah J. Maas and Colleen Hoover and things like that, but that's not the point of this video. So just so you know, I'm not going to talk about that. The thing is, there are plenty of book talkers that are talking about LGBT plus novels or books about people of color, but because they are statistically not the most likely to keep a new viewer engaged because they're not in line with the status quo, TikTok's not going to show that to you if you just enter the platform. And this kind of sucks, obviously, but it's not the fault of book talkers. It's because it's such an algorithm heavy platform. Luckily, you can kind of get rid of this problem by just scrolling more so that the algorithm will learn more about your preferences. It will understand that maybe these mainstream things that work for most people don't work for you, and it will start showing you other things. It is kind of a Faustian deal though, because it's like, well, do you want to get good book recommendations on TikTok? Gotta sell your soul to the algorithm, and with your soul I mean give me your data. Now that we have kind of the most common criticism of Book Talk out of the way, and I hope we can all understand that this is not book talkers' fault, but just a general problem of TikTok. Wow, foreshadowing for the rest of the video. Let's move on to what I think are the more interesting criticisms of TikTok. And I think most of the other criticism of TikTok kind of come down to people feeling like TikTok is kind of a bastardization of the wondrous intellectual hobby that is reading. The idea of critics is that on TikTok, people aren't actually appreciating the art of literature, but they only care about the aesthetics of reading. And when I read these articles, I sense a kind of existential fear from the author that reading is being reduced to a popular lifestyle trend. Here's another quote from the article. People calling themselves certified bookworms, but like entirely earnestly. Frequent references to people's yearly reading goals. It was a lifestyle, an aesthetic, and people were readers. And although I think that this criticism is a little weird, and we'll get to that, I am very fascinated by the idea of making your hobby part of your identity. Wow, the sun just went away, and that really added some dramatic effect to what I just said. Do you identify as a reader? I'm actually kind of curious, like let me know in the comments. Here's the thing, if you ask a random group of 20-year-olds what their hobbies are, chances are 9 out of 10 people are going to say that they enjoy watching TV shows, right? We all have nothing else to do. But I've never seen anyone describe themselves or like identify themselves as a TV show watcher, a Netflix fanatic, a Prime fan of Amazon Prime, a Disney adult? Well, I also think we're all very aware of the difference between someone who just enjoys watching a lot of movie and someone who describes themselves as a movie lover. Like the first one, you can have a very fun movie night with. The second one will cheat on you and then gaslight you into thinking it's actually your fault because you just didn't appreciate Tarantino enough, and therefore it was just making it really difficult for them to stay faithful to you. I'm allowed to make that joke because I have a Letterboxd account. So keeping this in mind, that there's definitely a difference between just doing something for fun and making the hobby part of your identity, what does it mean to be a reader? And why do some people identify that way? And why are people angry about it? Now, not to get too philosophical, and what I'm about to say, I say without judgment. I'm not saying it's good or bad, I'm just making an observation. The difference between just being someone who reads and being someone who identifies as a reader is that the latter sees a difference between themselves and other people based on the fact that they read and other people don't. By calling yourself a reader, you're inadvertently dividing the world between readers and non-readers in your head. And you see yourself as part of the group of people that are readers. A lot of people enjoy watching TV shows, but very few of us would identify as TV show watchers because we don't really see it as something that sets us apart from other people. Like a personal example, I really enjoy listening to music, but I would not really describe myself as a music listener or like a music lover. I do, however, describe myself as a Legend of Zelda fan. Why is that the example that I came up with? I don't because I do see myself as part of the group of victims who've been waiting for 6 years for the release of the new Zelda. But that's the crux, isn't it? You identify as something because you want to signal you are part of a group, part of a community of people with the same hobby. Yes, identifying as a reader means that you see reading as something that sets you apart from other people, but I think more importantly, it means that you see reading as something that makes you the same as other people who also read. Gosh, the sun needs to chill. Now I understand that it can make some people a little worried, like the author of this article. You may be afraid that no one really cares about your hobby the way you do because you're afraid that other people are just doing it because it's kind of a trend or because they just want to be part of a group. I understand the fear, but I don't think it's justified. I would say it's like the literary equivalent of being sad that your favorite niche band is gaining mainstream success because other people just don't understand their music like you do. I do want to jump to the defense of people who really make their hobby of reading part of their identity for a second, because I think it kind of makes sense, you know, in an increasingly individualistic society. It's no surprise that people are looking for things to hold on to kind of call part of their identity, and a hobby is an easy thing, it's just right there. Especially on TikTok. Like, are we all forgetting that TikTok is mostly young people, and not just any young people, teenagers in their puberty. The whole point of being a teenager in puberty is that you're looking to find out who you are. You're trying to answer the question of what your identity is. Of course you want to be part of a group. Another thing is that I don't really feel the need to share that I really like watching TV shows with other people, because most people you're going to meet online or in real life can already talk to you about how your latest favorite Netflix show got cancelled again. But of course we want to identify as readers because although it may sometimes not seem like it in our little bubble on the internet, but it's still kind of a niche hobby, and most people that you meet are not going to be into reading, so we kind of have to wear this hobby on our sleeves on social media just to signify to everyone, like, hey, I like reading too. Talk to me about it. I think there are kind of 3 pitfalls to having a community where you make your hobby part of your identity. The first one, gatekeeping. You're not really a reader if you don't read XYZ books. Side note, the thing is, saying that you're not really a reader because you're focusing too much on like pretty books, that's also gatekeeping. So it goes both ways. I think we all agree that this kind of like outspoken gatekeeping is not good, but in these kind of communities you very quickly can get a kind of implicit gatekeeping that is not outspoken, but just based on habits within an online community. There can be these subconscious rules that kind of appear that accidentally make people gatekeep themselves. Let me explain. Because a lot of people in a certain community do something that can make other people think that they need to also do that in order to really be part of it. Like, for example, feeling like you need to have your bookshelves look a certain way to fit in. Feeling like you need to have a certain amount of books, a certain amount of new books to fit in. You know, are you really a reader if you haven't read Sarah J. Maas? Are you really a fantasy fan if you don't know about Brandon Sanderson? I'm not saying any of these things are like right or wrong. I'm just saying that this is a potential pitfall and that sometimes gatekeeping can kind of arise out of these unspoken rules that no one really made, but they kind of appeared. And before you know it, you start changing your behavior based on what people in your little online community are doing. And the second thing, and this kind of plays into it, is consumerism and overconsumption. Now, I'm not gonna explain the problems with consumerism here because that would be an entire video, so I'm just gonna continue on the assumption that we all agree that overconsumption is not good, it's bad for the environment, it's bad for your wallet, and it's often linked to labor exploitation. So I hope we can all agree it's good to kind of reevaluate our need to always buy more and more and more things and our want to always be up to date with everything. And I'm a big proponent of just doing your own thing, doing things at your own pace. Given the type of content that does well on TikTok, like talking about books and having book hauls, it can make people feel like they need to own a lot of books to be a real reader. Maybe people can feel like they need to be up to date with every single book and they need to read every single book that they see people talking about, which lead to buying a lot of books, more books than you could actually read. It can make you feel like you need to collect all the special editions of a book or a series to be a true fan. I mean, special editions are super cool, but the people who create these kind of special editions know that they can make them more expensive because they're aware people don't just buy them for what they are, a really cool edition of a book, but also because of what it signifies. I'm a real fan. I'm a real reader. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that identifying really strongly with something can make you very vulnerable to marketing that targets that feeling. But to be honest, if you're gonna be consumerist in one area, let it be books. Like, yeah, I understand that you would criticize someone for buying, say, like 10 new fast fashion items every month, because that is proven to be bad for the environment and is linked to like exploitation of children. But someone who buys like 10 new books from their local bookstore every month that they're not going to be able to read, like, oh no, struggling bookshops may remain open. The publishing industry may not collapse. Foul consequences. Turns out I actually just have 2 points. Two pitfalls. Not 3. I lied, sorry. Why is it dark again? Is it because I lied? Did the sun go away because I lied? Hello, turns out that I was just capable of looking into the future, and because I found a third one, because as I'm editing this video, another wonderful booktuber, Murphy Napier, made a very similar video like this, also as a response on that article that I'm referencing throughout this video. And she also talks about a potential pitfall of this very strong online community that gets together because of a same hobby, and the thing that she came up with is that it can lead to comparison, and constantly being able to compare yourself to so many other people, like thousands of other people that have the same hobby as you, can have its downsides, and she talks more about that in her video, so I will just link it in the description so you can check that out. And this brings me to the next common criticism of book talk, and that is that it's not just about reading anymore, it's just about the aesthetics. Whether you like it or not, it is 100% true that reading has been aestheticized on social media. Here are some examples of some of my favorite Instagram accounts, like, oh look, someone posing with the book. Look at all this effort I put into making my bookshelf look beautiful. It's a person with a book again. Look at how pretty this book is. Now, I love procrastinating by spending my time on Instagram looking at pretty pictures of books, but it's also kind of a source of criticism for a lot of people. Let me read a big part of the article. Have a look at the TikTok in which someone has wrapped every unread book they own, over 300, in brown paper. Or the dude who says that one of his tips for learning how to read more is to romanticize reading by finding a cute outfit to read in. Or the person who has made miniature versions of every book they read in 2022 and displays them in a frame. That's a really cute idea. The fact that someone's criticizing this, that's just a cute idea. Anyway. Or the person who has re-tabbed their books because the tabs stick out too much, or they want to color match the tabs to the book covers. I've literally done this. With all this effort being put into being seen as a reader, one wonders how any of them have the time to read. So there's kind of a big assumption being made in this pretty common argument. The argument goes, right? There's a lot of aesthetic pictures, a lot of effort put into making things look aesthetically pleasing. Thus, this must mean what follows is that these people don't actually care about the book themselves. I hope we can all see that this is a huge leap in judgment. And yet, I've seen so many people complaining about these people on BookTok that they think they're not actually reading because it's all so pretty. But I've never actually seen a citation or an example of this happening on BookTok. And it makes you wonder, hey, is this person who doesn't actually read in the room with us right now? Well, I will say, although it is a big leap in judgment, I do understand where this leap in judgment comes from. There have always been people who pretend to read in order to come across as smarter or more interesting. Consider this passage from The Great Gatsby. A middle-aged man was staring with unsteady concentration at the shelves of books. As we entered, he wheeled excitedly around and examined Jordan from head to foot. "What do you think?" he demanded impetuously. "About what?" He waved his hand towards the bookshelves. "About that! As a matter of fact, you needn't bother to ascertain. I ascertained. They're real." "The books?" He nodded. "Absolutely real. Have pages and everything. I thought they'd be a nice durable cardboard. Matter of fact, they're absolutely real. Pages and... Here, let me show you." Taking our skepticism for granted, he rushed to the bookcases and returned with volume 1 of the Stoddard Lectures. "See?" he cried triumphantly. "It's a bona fide piece of printed matter. It fooled me. This fella's a regular Belasco. It's a triumph. What thoroughness. What realism. Knew when to stop too. Didn't cut the pages. But what do you want? What do you expect?" This passage is kind of making fun of people who would like buy books just so they can be in your room. Kind of reminds me of those people who would like sell Zoom backgrounds. Like fake Zoom backgrounds with like a lot of bookshelves in the back, so you could kind of come across it as more professional. So yeah, this sentiment has been around for a very, very long time. So it's understandable that when some people see all these pretty bookshelves on BookTok and all this focus on the aesthetics of things, it kind of makes alarm bells go off in your head and makes you think, is this real? But the thing is, one, this is just like some bias that you have in your mind. It's still no evidence that people aren't actually reading. And two, more importantly, I think there's a very obvious other reason for the focus on aesthetics on BookTok. Do you hear my creaking chair? Can you hear? Is this just throughout the video all this time? I think the focus on aesthetics comes back to the whole community thing. The aesthetics are just a visual language, if you will, to signal that you like reading. When people say it's no longer about the books, it's just about the aesthetics, they're not entirely wrong. Yes, sometimes it is indeed not actually about the book in the picture or the video. But this doesn't mean that people don't actually care about reading. It's about the message that this kind of picture sends to the viewers. Look, I like reading. Please follow me so we can talk about books together. And interestingly, you can tell they're kind of different visual languages on BookTok, you have the colorful, happy, and clean style of people who really enjoy popular fiction and romance books and young adult fiction, also kind of represented in the covers of these books, I just realized. And it signals, hey, if you like this vibe, you should follow me. And it also works the other way around. People thinking, hey, I enjoy these kinds of books, so I'll make content that kind of looks like this. Some, not all people, who prefer to read more like classic books or literary fiction tend to kind of criticize this more bubbly side of TikTok for its like shallowness and like the rainbow bookshelves. But the thing is, they themselves also have their own visual language. There are tons of TikToks with visuals of pretty thrifted books with broken spines, neutral colors, and vintage penguin editions. It also signals, if you like this vibe, you should probably follow me. It's very easy to criticize someone's white wood pristine rainbow bookshelf for being shallow, but the muted toned second-hand books on a brown shelf is also an aesthetic. Even the people who refuse to participate in the whole aesthetic thing, who refuse to focus on how pretty things are or how things look, that unedited, unaesthetic look of these kind of videos have in themselves become their own visual language, their own aesthetic that signals, hey, I don't really care about the prettiness of things. If you like this vibe, you should follow me. There seems to be this weird assumption that either you enjoy aesthetics or you enjoy books and actual content, things with depth. So if you see people that really enjoy the aesthetics of reading, that must mean that you don't actually enjoy reading itself. If there was like a Venn diagram of people who enjoyed the aesthetics of reading and who people who actually read, they would like not overlap in the minds of these people. I remember a little story about the olden days on booktube on YouTube. There was drama at some point because there was criticism that booktube was just girls with faces full of makeup sitting in front of their pretty bookshelf with fairy lights, and that would mean that they don't actually have anything of interest to say, which again comes down to this weird assumption that making an effort to make things look pretty must mean that you have nothing of interest to say. You know, during my master's degree in neurobiology, one of the first things I learned is that if you wear makeup, it actually makes you lose brain cells. Especially if you also like organizing your books to like match each other. That just like has like some weird effect on like the part of your brain that controls your reading comprehension. Yeah, it's very really sad illness. They're still trying to find a cure. But really, this Venn diagram, I would say, is more like an onion, okay? How little Shrek was right. The middle is the love for reading. There will be a layer around that is enjoying the look of pretty books, and then another layer around that is about sharing your love for books in a pretty way. And this is just the visual language that you use to signal to other people that you're just like them. So the criticism given is the TikTok books community is more about a lifestyle aesthetic than actual reading. I would say that what looks like a lifestyle aesthetic is actually just a way to signal to other people that you're just like them. And yes, it is true, you could technically also just do book reviews to signal that you enjoy reading, but I don't know how these visual language came to be. I think it has something to do with the fact that like Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, they're all visual platforms, so a visual language that looks nice is gonna be the one that people stick with. That's just a little side note. We've talked about the concept of identifying as a reader and really putting a lot of focus on the aesthetics of books and how this is not necessarily a bad thing but could just be a way to find other people within a community. I do want to talk about how there's something pretty unique about this kind of self-identification on TikTok specifically and on social media. Something that I've noticed is happening on TikTok and the reading community on there is that people aren't just sharing what they're reading to signal what they are, readers. They're also sharing what they're reading to signal who they want to be. And this, of course, happens on TikTok all the time, right? This kind of self-branding. There's always this question of like, who are you? Like, are you pretty beautiful? Are you hot beautiful? Are you a vanilla girl? Are you a clean girl? Are you a dark academia girly? A skater girl? It never stops. And there's this interesting phenomenon on TikTok where the type of books that you are reading are shown to show something about who you are as a person, right? It's not about just that you read, but also about what you're reading. Example, 2 summers ago, there was this little trend of like hot girl books, if anyone remembers that, where people were showing that they were cool and interesting and hot because they read Sally Rooney and Tessa Moshfegh and Joan Didion. Especially Sally Rooney became this whole thing. There's this whole concept of being a Sally Rooney girly. Sally Rooney is the author of Normal People, and she tends to write stories of 20-something-year-olds that are struggling with being in relationships with older men. They're struggling with mental illness, not knowing where you want to go in your life, being in your 20s. And reading these books and enjoying her books is kind of associated with being, you know, a Sally Rooney girly. I've definitely made my own ironic jokes about it, you know, it means you're cool intellectual, not in touch with your feelings. And I've seen that people are trying out Sally Rooney's books, not just because they're interested in her stories, but because they're interested in the question, am I a Sally Rooney girly? So it's more than just about the story itself. It's also about what it means to be someone who enjoys Sally Rooney's books. Again, I'm not saying this is bad or good. I'm not making any morality judgments. I'm just making an observation. Funnily enough, this kind of behavior also comes from the people on TikTok that will shame mainstream book talk readers for being too shallow. That is because there's this whole identity being created about not liking Colleen Hoover. I've gone full circle. There are tons of videos that you can find of people recommending books in a way that's like, POV, you don't like Colleen Hoover. So people aren't just talking about how they don't like Colleen Hoover because they want to talk about the genuine criticisms of Colleen Hoover, but because of what it signifies to them to be someone who doesn't like Colleen Hoover, and that to them means someone who has more critical thinking skills, who has better taste in books. So these people are very eager to announce to the world that they do not like Colleen Hoover. And this phenomenon of reading certain books or not reading certain books to seem more cool and chic has also been criticized. It's one of the criticisms of book talk. Yeah, I guess that's fair. Maybe it is a little weird, but I don't see there's a lot of harm in this. I think it's odd to criticize people for the kinds of books that they read, you know, saying someone's stupid for only reading Sargent Mouse and Colleen Hoover, and then being surprised when people start basing what they read on what other people will think of them when they read those books. You see what I mean? It's like, oh no, look at these people that are reading certain books just to seem cool. That's stupid. Anyway, look at those people. They're so uncool for reading those books. You see what I mean? Like it feeds into itself. Like you're part of the problem if you do that. We live in a world where, especially women, but people on the internet in general, are constantly criticized for the things that they're doing and enjoying. So it's not surprising when, as a result, they're going to meticulously curate what they're doing and enjoying to elicit the right reaction from people, to gain a sense of control of what other people think of them. And this brings me to my final point, which is that this is not a book talk problem. It's not the problem of people on book talk. It's a wider phenomenon that has already been criticized in other great videos that I will link in the description. But we live in an age where we are constantly encouraged to kind of brand ourselves online.
This is how you're going to rebrand yourself as hot and mysterious.
Here's 5 things you can do to completely rebrand yourself in the next 90 days.
So here's part 2 to me trying to rebrand my style.
create an online version of ourselves. On Instagram, we share a version of ourselves. Based on the photos that we post, our followers will create an idea of us. On TikTok, you share yourself with potentially the whole world. Based on the kind of videos that you produce, anyone could form an opinion on you. And as a result of this, anyone is kind of encouraged to create a kind of personal brand. And a lot of what we think of each other is based on our online persona, especially among Gen Z and people who are very on TikTok. So young people are encouraged to think about how they present themselves on the internet. What is your online brand? What do you post online? What vibe do you give off? And if people on a niche on the internet are sharing about the books that they read, well, then this personal branding thing is going to influence that part of the internet as well. People know that sharing a picture of yourself reading Taylor Jenkins Reid is going to have a different reaction from people than sharing a picture of yourself reading Kafka. And yet again, remember, this is TikTok, so it's mostly young people that are already really thinking about who they are and how they want to present themselves to the world. Now, I don't think this is very healthy behavior, but obviously we shouldn't shame anyone who is doing it. I don't think we should shame anyone who's kind of fallen victim to this kind of mentality. But if you do ever find yourself feeling like you really need to think about what your vibe is or what aesthetic you fit into, just know that you really don't have to. Remember that you're a person and not a brand, and if you don't feel like you perfectly fits the cottagecore aesthetic or the clean girl aesthetic, that is okay, because you're a real person and you're not just what you present yourself as online. So anyone who criticizes BookTok and BookTokers for reducing reading to a personality trait should stop pointing their fingers at those stupid young girls and instead should start thinking about the broader influence that social media has on how we present ourselves to the world. My final thoughts, in the end, I think it kind of comes down to this. There used to be a certain image of what it means to read books, you know? It conjures images of old men sitting in these beautiful, like, vintage couches and dark bookshelves and big libraries. It's something intellectual people do. Now, reading has become more popular again, which is amazing, but it also looks different. It is more colorful, it's happier, the image is more associated with young women. And we all know our society loves hating on anything that teenage girls do. Oh, you love a boy band? That's stupid and hysterical. You enjoy makeup? That's just shallow. Now reading is becoming more and more associated with young women, but as a society, we're not yet ready to hate on reading. So what do? We say, well, they're not actually reading. What they're doing, they're clearly not real readers. And that way, we can hate on them.
Hello, my last little side note as I am finalizing editing this video. Although I'm saying here that this negativity is because reading is becoming more and more associated with young girls, I do want to mention that I don't think this kind of snobbery only affects women, because there's definitely a lot of non-women LGBT people on BookTok as well, and this kind of snobbery has been directed at the fantasy reading community for a very long time, and that is also definitely not female dominated at all.
I hope you enjoyed my attempt at being a commentary YouTuber for one video. You can tell that that's what's happening because the microphone is in the frame right now. Please remember that I'm just a random person on the internet sharing their opinion. I am in no way an expert. I'm sure I said some things wrong, but I would love to hear your opinion, so I invite you all to also be a random person on the internet sharing their opinion. If you want to see more of me talking about books and giving my opinion on bookish things, make sure you subscribe. I would love to have you here. If you want to see how I present myself on social media, you can follow my Instagram, which, yeah. Okay. I hope you enjoy your day. I hope you enjoy reading. I hope you have a lot of fun making content about it or consuming content about it. And I hope you do it mindfully. And with that being said, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. thank you for watching this video, and I will see you soon with another one next week. Goodbye!